Side Miney begins with Fitter, Happier, guest starring Perceptor from Transformers Animated. Actually, the robotic voice is actually the Fred voice from the Macintosh Plain Talk text-to-speech synthesis. This choice gives this track a very fittingly mechanical, monotone, and synthetic feel, almost as if it's brainwashed and completely dumbed down entirely. Made even more so by what this voice says. Short phrases that sound like a form of schedule with errands and slogans, going on how ideally one should be living and go about in their lives, being fit, happy, and comfortable, among other things. But over the course of these 2 minutes, however, the lines start to get more implicitly disturbing. Paranoia, killing moths, washing spiders down the plug hole, etc. Some of these phrases might even offer some rather interesting and dark implications about this protagonist of ours and what they might have done in the past. And by the end, he's described as a pig in a cage on antibiotics, feeling like an animal to the slaughter, being fed with drugs in order to ease any pain and anxiety, only to find out that it only worsens those feelings. And all this over some rather haunting and unsettling piano keys being played, as well as a faint looping sample of a bit of dialogue from the film 3 Days of the Condor. This song is about how both paranoia and conformity can easily go hand in hand together. By trying to relieve ourselves of any negative emotions, be it through the use of medication or other means, they end up feeding those very same negative emotions. And this was, apparently at one point, considered to be used as the intro of OK Computer, but the band members decided and believed that it would have been off-putting for some listeners. Honestly, listening to this song again, especially with the context of the overall album, I can easily see it as a potential opening. Although I can understand the decision to put this slap right in the middle of the album. And this is a track that you may not want to listen to late at night on your own before you go to bed. It is that creepy and unsettling. And however, that's kind of the intended on it. It's meant to give you the experience of being paranoid. Then we have Electioneering, possibly the rockiest of the songs in this album, with a bit of cowbell and tambourine, not only on par with some of Radiohead's past songs on Pablo Honey and the Bends, but also a bit reminiscent of REM. It's also among their first to really tackle a political subject matter, being about voting and elections and how some politicians would take the opportunity of the people, exploiting them and stopping at nothing and saying the right things, what they may want to hear as mass appeal, so they can get that majority vote. Kind of sums up the Conservative Party, really. And in the chorus, Tom sings, "When I go forwards, you go backwards, and somewhere we'll meet." This could possibly refer to either power being gained or being lost. Or if we ever try to dismantle a system with the intent of progressing, we may end up in a state of anarchy and, well, regressing. And soon, we'll all find that middle ground, wherever it may be. Or it could refer to how some people would play songs backwards to see if there's any satanic messages or something. The second verse mentions things like riot shields and voodoo economics, probably a reference to protests and what their motivations may be, as well as mentioning cattle prods and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. To them, life's nothing more than just another big business. Here, our character goes through a moment of stress, wondering if those elected even do care about people, or are they just willing puppets who will do whatever they can as they get to sit on a high chair and kind of laze about. This feeling of stress is perfectly captured in the climactic guitar solo before it eventually crashes down and dwindles away. It is that good. After that is Climbing Up the Walls, a somewhat slower song like Paranoid Android and Karma Police. This track deals with some implied mental illness and psychology, feeling trapped and run down by the apathy of society until we too are eventually and inevitably infected with such apathy as well. Tom's vocals here sound a bit offish and compressed, likely to represent how suppressed and repressed we can easily feel. Similar could be said with the rather buzzy bass of Colin Greenwood and the very metallic drums of Philip Selway. Behind all this are a section of atonal strings arranged by Johnny Greenwood, which you'd more likely notice if you were to listen with headphones or earphones. Then it too evolves into another tragically rocking finale as Tom soon yells out in crackling agony, almost as if crying for help, only to find no response. It's all futile, before the dying song drags itself just a bit more before eventually stopping altogether. It's another bone-chilling song from Radiohead's catalogue that's worth checking out. Side Miney ends with No Surprise, the fourth and last single of the album. A simple term I'd use to describe this song would be dream rock, Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World for a whole new generation. Beneath the calm and solemn guitar and glockenspiel lies some pretty bittersweet lyrics. Similar to Fitter and Happier, these two explore the mundane and the fear of losing one's own identity to society and its politically correct norm and status quo. Our protagonist's heart is filling up like a landfill. Then he clearly needs to recycle his heart more often, especially when his carbon footprint is quite literally a carbon footprint. Not helped by this job of his that's slowly killing him. His job happens to involve having to deal with some radioactive material, and the company he works for are too cheap to afford any protective hazmat suits. And that sure can't be good. He wishes to bring down the governments, believing that they don't speak for us, a sentiment of which I'm sure many people can share with and connect to. This may be our character at his lowest, either nearly working to death, or even thinking of taking his own life, shaking hands with carbon monoxide. Maybe he does work with hazardous stuff on a regular basis. And as for the rest of the song, he repeats the lines of no alarms and no surprises, as if to say that he's been so used to anything and everything happening in life that nothing really takes him by surprise anymore. Everything has become so mediocre and predictable to him. Not that I blame him one bit though. Mind you, I sometimes get a similar feeling if ever I have to watch a Michael Bay movie.